Hello, fourth graders. This is Miss Kyle. I'm going to go in with you today to do a little bit of like a check-in to get our brains warmed up for Chapter 8 again. I know it's been quite a few weeks since we've worked on this, so this video is meant to help you check in with yourself, check in with what you did in class several weeks ago, and just be ready to go forward. So, here we have some key vocabulary that are important words to know, important terms, because they will be coming up within the chapter throughout our week and going forward through Chapter 8. So what I would like you to please do at this time is if you could pause this video and take a second to see if your brain remembers what each of these words are. Maybe tell your pet or a family member an example of each one. So now is your time to pause the video and just think on some of these terms. All right, so the first two terms we're going to talk about are our numerator and denominator. So we've gone over these a few times in both our classes. So let's do a little bit of a review. So the numerator is this number that is on top of your fraction. It always is going to show you how many parts of the whole are being used. And then our denominator shows here at the bottom how many parts we have total. So if we were to use this pizza here as an example, we would be able to say, well, there are 6 total pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 is our denominator, and there are 2 left. So 2/6 of the pizza are left. A good way to remember this word denominator is to think, well, D could be down. So if you look down on your fraction, the lower part here is always going to be your denominator. So when I'm using those terms, go ahead and make sure that your brain remembers the top number is our numerator, the bottom number is our denominator. Going forward, another important term to know are multiples. So a multiple is when you continue to multiply one number by another number. So if we're thinking our multiples of 4, we end up with 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, etc. Or if we're dealing with fractions and we're going by 1/8, we have 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. You can see that between each of these fractions, you're just adding another 1/8 to it, or you're multiplying it by 2, multiplying it by 3, multiplying it by 4, 5, 6. Or if we were to start with a fraction of 2/6 and we were to list some multiples of 2/6, we'd be jumping to 4/6, 6/6, 8/6. So multiples are something that's used in both just regular whole numbers and fractions. Alrighty, going on to a product. This is a word that we have used throughout the year. Hopefully in 3rd grade and 2nd grade and all your time you've heard this word, product. Oops, sorry. A product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So if you're dealing with like an addition or subtraction or division, that would not be a product. Product is only for multiplication. So here are some examples here. We have 3 times 4 would be 12, so 12 is our product. Or 3 times 3/8, we would have 9/8 as our product. And notice that when I'm multiplying my fraction here, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, I'm just multiplying the numerator and the whole number. My denominator stays the same. So 3 times 3 equals 9. And then we're dealing with 8ths. So I'm just carrying over the same denominator into my answer. Continuing on, another important keyword to know is this word unit, or this phrase, unit fraction. So unit fraction is just one part of a whole. So if we were dealing with halves, it would be 1/2. unit fraction of sixths would be 1/6, or 1/100th, or even 1/1,000,000th. So unit, this word unit over here, just means one. So anytime that your problem is dealing with a unit fraction, it is dealing with one part of the whole. And keep in mind, you don't want to change that denominator for what you're dealing with. That would be like if we were dealing with eighths, you want to keep your answer to eighths, 1/8. Or if you were dealing with carrots, you can't just automatically change your answer to be dealing with watermelons. You can't change your denominator. So if it's saying what's the unit fraction when you're dealing with 600, it would be 1/600th. Going forward. So now we're going to do a little bit of a review from 8.1. So 8.1 was dealing with looking at, well, how do we transfer what we know about adding fractions to multiplying fractions? So here we have 5/6, which could be easily divided up to show 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. All together, we add up our numerators, we end up with 5/6. Remember, our denominator does not change. So when we're multiplying, we could easily just say, well, how many groups of 1/6 are there? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So instead, we could just say, oh, 5/6 is the same as 5 times 1/6. 5 groups of 1/6 put together. So when you come across problems that say write the fraction as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. Well, let's pause there for a second. There are some key words here that we just went over. So a product is an answer to a multiplication problem. So we know we're multiplying here, of a whole number and a unit fraction. Well, we know unit fraction means one part of our whole. So let's see, over here, we're dealing with 1/10. And so now we're like, 1/10 times what would be 3/10? Well, I can use my math brain to pause for a second and say, well, when I'm multiplying whole numbers and fractions, I'm only multiplying my top number, my numerator. So 1 times what would be 3? 1 times 3. So we know that when we're being asked to write a fraction as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction, I know it's a lot of words, I know it's a lot of vocabulary, but all it's asking you to do is say, well, if I split up this fraction here, I can split it up to say 3 times 1/10, 1 unit fraction. Going forward into 8.2. 8.2 was going forward with the idea of listing some multiples of our fractions and kind of doing some bigger multiplication moves. So over here you can see our timeline. If we're dealing with fifths, down at the bottom you can say 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/6, 6/6, 6/5, 7/5, 8/5, 9/5, 10/5. It's kind of a mouthful. But when you're dealing with multiples of 2/5, you're knowing you're not just counting up by 1/5 at a time. Now you're counting up by 2/5. So we go from 0 to 2/5, and then 4/5, and then 6/5, and then 8/5, and then 10/5. Notice how it's counting up by 2's in our numerator. Our denominator does not change. I'm going to keep emphasizing that because it is an important thing to know about fractions. So you're not just changing carrots to watermelons. Your carrots are going to stay the same. Your denominator does not change. And then another key point that was listed in 8.2 is just being able to list those multiples. So go ahead and think about what those multiples would be for 4/5. What would be the next one if you did another group of 4/5, and then another group of 4/5, and then another group? Pause this video for a moment and see if you can remember what would be filled in there. And your participation is super important in this so that you can say, my brain does remember this. I am ready to keep going with math. All right, so let's go ahead and see. So 4/5 and another 4/5 would be 8/5. Notice our denominator does not change, but we added another group of 4/5, ended up with 8. Next, we would be adding 4 more, so we would end up with 12/5. And then next, what comes next? That's right, 16/5. And lastly, we would have 20/5. So ultimately for 8.1 and 8.2, you're just thinking about how to transfer what you know about adding fractions into multiplying fractions times a whole number. So I hope that you enjoyed this quick review video and that you're ready to go ahead and give it a try on doing our little mid check-in, our chapter 8 check-in that I've designed for you. Just do your best. Think about what you learned here, and you're always welcome to go back and listen to the video again if there's still a concept that doesn't make sense to you. And if you're still like, I really don't know what's going on here, please go ahead and reach out to your teacher, and we will do what we can to support you. Thank you for watching 4th grade, and I will see you next time.